So for this week, I want to talk about, last week we talked about kind of market demand
Right?
and we talked about, the four whys and kind of understanding the demand and how your strategy is going to be based off of that demand.
Okay.
What I want to talk about today is kind of we now know the demand, we have an idea of the strategy,
Mhm.
but now we've got to create this product market fit,
Right.
which is kind of taking that strategy and putting it in action.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. Because with product market fit, what you're really talking about is now that you know that somebody will buy in general what you have, what specifically are they buying and what are they looking for? On the retail side, a lot of it is packaging. What is the specific packaging?
Yep.
Depending on the type of store, some stores, it's okay to just put it in a clear plastic bag that's zip sealed,
Yep.
um, and other stores, no, it's got to be a box or it's some very elaborate packaging on
Yep.
the outside, and some of it varies from product to product,
Yep.
but it also a lot of it varies from store to store. So it's not just that you've decided somebody needs this, somebody wants this, somebody will buy this, and I know who they are, but that person where they're buying it, are you providing the visual appeal
Yep.
that they're looking for?
Well, I mean, I think the way a book described it, and I want to come up with a better word because I didn't like the word they used, but they used the word determinants. You got to determine your customer's determinants. And what they mean by that is basically you got to understand what your customer values and how they value it. So they use the example of like Caterpillar, you know, heavy duty construction, quality, longevity are very important things.
Right. And you'll notice that hard hats and safety vests are all over their.
Bright yellow colors, yep. But the determinants that like will affect someone's purchase decision on why they would buy Caterpillar versus say a competition is really going to be about that quality and that longevity dynamic. Versus for say a sports car, people are probably not as concerned about the longevity nor the durability as they are about how fast it goes.
Or how cool it looks when it
Yep.
goes fast.
A Caterpillar, it doesn't matter how cool it looks. It doesn't matter. It like that's low priority. The ability to go fast is extremely low priority because that's just not what's valued or needed.
Right. Right. And because you're valuing something that's going to work on the construction site and work reliably.
Yeah.
And that reliability is that thing that, to some degree, is your reputation.
Well, and that's kind of what they talk about is that your determinants is how you should decide your reputation.
Yep. Yep.
Is you want to make your branding and your reputation build around whatever is people that you're going after care about the most.
Yeah. So when you say determinants, let me make sure I'm clear
Sure.
about what we're talking about here. You're talking about those things that in a person's mind, they see it and it just kind of flicks a switch and says, yep, that's what I want. That's the one. That checks off one of my check boxes.
It would be what's your biggest checkbox that like it has to like this matters
Well,
most. But
right, right.
yes.
Normally you think of there's one. You always want to
Well,
find the
there's
one,
always a bunch,
but
but
there's always a series of check boxes, and some of them are in the buying cycle,
yep.
leading up to actually talking to you before they even talk to you. And then when they talk to you, what are the check boxes that they need to check off in order to buy?
I mean, yes. I mean, I guess you could call it checkboxes. I mean, it's really got. I mean, I don't know. I think I'm in like the restaurant industry. Okay, I'll
Okay.
give my background in the restaurant industry. In the restaurant industry, and in most, in my opinion, most B2C consumer package type goods,
Right.
right? Everyday buy items. It's either value is what the people care about, right? So how much I get for what I spend, or it's about um the like quality, right? Because there's some people that they just care about I want high quality. I just want to know it's high quality. And then you have speed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Speed slash convenience, right? How easy is it for me to get it and how fast can I get it? Right?
Mm-hmm.
If I have to go into Walmart and walk to the other corner to buy the one thing I want to buy versus the store next door has it right up front, I may go to the store next door even for the extra 50 cents because it's right up front.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so convenience is like really big for people. And so it's kind of like, for your consumer, what do they care about most? Right? A family is going to probably care more about the value of a meal than someone who's single making six figures,
Correct.
like that,
Well,
like those are
possibly,
just
but it's some of it's in ingredients or it's a specific flavor in those cases.
sometimes flavor,
When you
but
talk food,
when you talk masses, it flavor is usually believe it or not, a very low priority in most people's minds, in my experience.
wow.
In the food industry, flavor is only it needs to be good enough. It's not really a top priority.
So it's not a trigger for a buy.
I mean, there's some people out there, but I can tell you between Taco Bell, Panda Express, burger restaurants, Philly cheesesteak restaurant, um, as well as a sushi shop, flavor matters, but there's very few people that come to your restaurant because of the flavor, unless you're on a higher level scale, right?
Okay.
Those restaurants are making their money because people value either the value, the price, or the cost. And the only way that the flavor comes in would be like it's a different flavor.
Hmm.
Like one of the things I will say that Taco Bell did get advantaged with that I was told by multiple customers back in the day is that if you work next to the Taco Bell, a Taco Bell literally has a different meal for everything. Versus a pizza shop, it's still a pizza.
Right.
For Taco Bell, it could be a burrito today, tacos tomorrow, and it could be, freaking quesadilla the next day, or pizza, or salad, right? There's a lot of variations on the type of food that you're eating.
Okay.
But that's about the main thing where flavor comes in. The biggest factor for most people is the value, right? So, like,
Hmm.
how much do I get for the price? What's the speed/convenience level for me?
Hmm.
And then quality.
Yeah.
Like those are the main three that most people are looking
Okay.
at. And
Well,
there's
just yeah,
obviously several others.
yeah. The reason I'm asking is just that quality is a hard thing to compete on.
No, it is. But like, think about a car, right? Like, think about like, what are your values when you buy a car? Like I know you're looking
Well,
right
my
now, right?
values are very
No, I
different.
know, but think about it, like right now you're in the middle of looking for your next car,
Right.
right? Looking at moving electric. What is it that you're looking at? What is your greatest value when it comes to that? Because like for me, my greatest value would probably be range, right? Because for me, like I care most if I have an electric vehicle, if I don't want to have to worry about doing long road trips and can I fill it up. I want to be able to go to the coast and back and not even think twice,
Right.
right? I
Right.
want to be able to drive around all day and what would be a tank of gas is still
Mhm.
a tank of gas, just
Right.
electric charge that I can come home and charge it afterwards.
Right. And yeah, when you talk about range, for me, the magic number is 350,
Yeah, I would agree.
which nobody has. And the reason it's 350 miles is that if you look at an 80% degradation, because when they talk about batteries being done and dead and no good anymore and all that, they're only talking about the reducing the capacity to 80% of the actual full value.
Right.
Okay. And the problem you have is 80% of 350 is 270.
Okay.
And right now, 250 miles works just fine for most people.
As a general statement, yeah, I would agree.
So at 80% degradation, at whatever magical place we get that, I would still have a usable car.
Mm.
And that's the thing that I think a lot of people don't realize about electric cars is
Yeah.
that right now you buy a car and you kind of like expect to get 200,000 miles out of it,
Mm.
regardless of
Yep.
who it is. And some of them, you could get as much as 300, but you're going to get pretty much 200,000 good miles
But
out of any
right.
car.
But for you, what is it that you value when you're looking at these cars? Because it's not
Yeah.
just range. I
Well,
know that's not a top concern for you.
it's not a top concern because most of them all have 250 miles or more.
Which for
And
you
and at
is
250,
enough.
even on road trips, I can live with that.
Right.
I can make that work.
So
I mean,
250s, no, but the point that we're trying to get at is with these determinants is that 250 is enough for you.
right.
There's not a greater quality or less there's less quality, but there's not
Yeah.
a greater quality
Yeah.
that someone could
Right.
have.
Right.
Someone saying I can do 400
Right.
miles isn't
D-
mind blowing for
no,
you better.
doesn't excite me.
And so the range is not differentiating enough to matter.
Correct. Right.
So what else do you look at in a
For
car?
me, the main thing that I'm struggling with is battery voltage, which is something that nobody thinks about. It's a
Okay.
technical thing, and it has to do with how fast a car charges. Is what people don't realize is we have two levels of charging. We have what they call 400 and what they call 800 volt, which is really not 400 or 800. It's actually 500 volt or 1,000 volts.
Mm.
And that's one of the reasons that CCS was created, and one of the reasons all the automakers went to that rather than the NAS or North American Standard Tesla connector is that Tesla only supported 400-volt charging. And when you understand EVs, what you have to understand is that you only pay for amps. You don't pay for volts. And
Okay.
if you double the voltage, you half your amperage that you have to pull.
Okay.
Okay, which means that everything works less. You have to pull less power and
Sure.
everything, and yet I can double. So in other words, a car that would pull 100 kilowatts, if I doubled the voltage that it was charging at, it could pull 200 kilowatts.
Right. No, no,
So
I get what you're
so it goes
saying.
much faster.
But so for you, amperage though is
So voltage is one
or
of the key
voltage, I
things.
mean.
Is I want a high voltage battery pack that's on the 400-volt side, around 450 volts, which nobody makes yet.
Okay.
And on the other side, as close to 1,000 volts, 850, 900 volts would be ideal because you can pull,
Okay. So voltage is a big thing for you.
right, because it reduces your charging time.
Okay.
Because charging time is my main thing, is what I really care about is I want a car that in 15 minutes can go from 10 to 80% or get to the next stop in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So basically, I want to come in, I want to plug my car in, I want to go in, go to the bathroom, get a coffee or whatever it is I do at that
Sure.
stop, stretch a little bit, get back in my car, and be fully charged and ready to go. Rather than what I did with my gas car, just so you understand, is you pull up to the pump, you spend 5-10 minutes pumping gas into your
Yeah.
car, then you go park on the curb, then you go in and go to the bathroom
Yeah.
and get food or whatever, and then you get back in your car and you go, and you spent 15-20 minutes. I want to spend that 15-20 minutes
Yeah, you're getting charged up the entire
in a
time.
more efficient way. Just plug the
Yeah.
car and let it do its thing and go take care of what I need to take
But
care
see,
of.
what you're talking about is, and this is the thing I think is really important, is what we're talking about is two different determinants,
Yes,
right? One is speed of charging is really what you're talking about,
you're right.
and the other one is the longevity of the charging.
Yes.
And the problem, to your point, that I think, and this is something that I think everyone needs to be aware of in general with any business, you can hit a cap on a level of determinants. As far as there's a certain level where people just don't care beyond that level. They don't need the extra. Like that is good enough.
Right.
And if you've hit that cap, trying to improve that cap to beat your competition is not the right way to meet the market.
Mm-hmm.
Like your product isn't going to fit better with the market because you beat that cap. But finding a different cap that people are interested in getting beat can allow you to differentiate and create a product fit for a market that cares about it.
Correct.
Right? Because I think to your point, for you, I think a lot of people feel that way about charging if they would appreciate a faster charger.
Mm-hmm.
They would appreciate the ability to get closer to the amount of time it takes a gas car to charge up their EV.
Yeah. I mean, I think most people would be fine with going to a place, plugging in your car, and then going inside, doing whatever you're going to do,
Yeah.
come back, your car's all charged, you unplug it, and you go on with life.
But to that point, right? If everyone had that, what would be your next step of differentiation you would use?
After that, I think it goes back to utilization. In
Okay.
other words, do I need an SUV? What size of SUV do I need? Um, all those kinds of normal considerations. Because it's like, for instance, the Silverado EV
Yeah.
that Chevy just brought out. Okay.
Yep.
450 miles of range for just the base vehicle. Towing, I just saw a video where they got in excess of 220 miles towing with it, with
Yep.
a trailer that is the worst possible case kind of thing.
Yep.
Um, and that's enough.
Yeah.
If somebody comes out with a 500-mile truck, nobody cares.
Some people will care, but it'll be a very small
Very,
segment.
very small segment, and only people who really want bragging rights more than anything else, because practically speaking, that's far enough to get you to the next charger,
Yeah.
and then the charger after that,
Yeah.
if that one's
Down or whatever.
down or
Yep.
whatever. And so that really puts us in that sweet spot, as you were saying. At what point do you not need to worry about going further? And I think that's a magical place right there. But some of the other things, as far as charging speed, we don't know really how fast it charges. I mean, we know how fast it charges at the peak, but that doesn't mean anything. I don't care that something's a 200 kilowatt car or whatever. I care about how long will it charge at that level
No, I gotcha.
before it drops off. So again, I want my 15 minutes. I'm sorry. I'm committed to 15 to 20 minutes. It's got to be 15 to 20 minutes. And then I need to get on and I need to get enough of a charge that I can go that
But
next.
but so to that point, right? And this is where product market fit's important, and this is why we talk about market research so much. Is I want to bring this up because I don't even think you're aware of what you're describing,
Okay. Probably not.
right?
Most people aren't.
No, 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 no.
And I'm no different.
But here's my thing: is what you're describing is exactly this is so what you're describing is great. The way people respond to that, this is why the product market fit and the way that we approach things is so important to me. Is that the standard person would say, okay, we've got to make a car who can make a 15-minute charge. Right? Like that's the standard reaction that most business owners would make to that kind of a situation or comment is okay, we gotta find a way to make this happen.
Right.
Let's be real, technology is probably a couple years off between testing, verification, et cetera, for that to be in case. Maybe sooner, but most likely just knowing the way car manufacturing
Well,
works, we're looking at 2 to 3 years minimum.
well, if somebody decided that today that was the thing,
Yeah.
the only thing that mattered, yes, it'd be 2 to 3 years because it takes them 2 to 3 years to validate
Right.
and go through the whole process. Now, batteries do exist
Yeah.
that do all that right now.
Yeah.
I mean, we can actually have a 450 volt battery
Sure.
in an EV right now, right today. All the technology exists. It's a matter of people being willing to put it in because of the cost,
Well, right. Which is a whole different discussion. My point is like the natural business owner would go, okay, all I care about is we've got to figure out how we're going to make this happen. My response from a marketing perspective is, okay, that's your concern. Okay, guys, how can we brainstorm of a way to make it to where going to the gas station is more than going to a gas station? Or how do we make it so that going to get your car charged is more than just getting your car charged? Right? So like in my head already, I'm going, okay, could we work out a deal with Disney so that you get like free Disney Plus whenever you're charging your vehicle? For like however, like for the first, 2 hours you're there, you get like this temporary subscription pass and you get to watch Disney Plus or you get to watch Netflix or you get to watch whatever and you just get these temporary passes to basically watch stuff while you're there.
Mm-hmm.
Like right to pass the time
Right.
to create their chair. What if we had tablets that were there that you could just grab the tablet, have it in your vehicle and just be watching? And it's basically we put security codes and stuff on it so like if someone tried to steal it, they wouldn't be able to go far without us tracking it. And it can't be opened without your EV vehicle being plugged in. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like things like that. Like now it's only that now we're creating an entertainment side while you're charging it.
Yeah, but now you're taking my 15 minutes and you're making it 30.
Absolutely. I want to do my best to make it an enjoyable 30 minutes, which for you might not solve your problem, but for other people they might be able to make an excuse for it. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And that's why in Europe, what you're seeing now are charging plazas
Sure.
where you can literally go in, have Wi-Fi, use your laptop,
Yeah.
get a cup of coffee.
Yeah, coffee stations.
you know.
Absolutely. I love it. Cafe stations.
Yep.
Put a charging port right at a cafe station. Or here's another spot, like just throwing it out there, right? Think of like the city of Beaverton, Portland, where they have like those like restaurant sections where they like cornered off the roads and it's just like outdoor seating for restaurants and stuff. Imagine if they had like special parking by those that were specifically for EV.
Right.
And
Yes.
like only EV. Now you can go get your coffee, you can get your lunch, you can have your business meeting and charge your vehicle at the same time.
Exactly. Exactly.
So it's that kind of creativity that to me is also product market fit is it's how do we create that mindset in the market to match our product or it's how do we match our product to the market or both preferably.
Right. No.
Does that make sense?
No, definitely. And that's why for me, restaurants having even slow charging, what we call slow charging, J1772 or level 2 charging, all those fancy words that people like to throw out there.
Yep.
Basically, you're talking about a 6 kilowatt charge. If I have a F-150 or I have a truck of some sort, that's way too little.
Right.
Okay, you need a 50 kilowatt charger. But for most of the cars out there, getting 6 kilowatts an hour and going in and spending an hour and having dinner is a great way to kind of pick up some fuel
Yeah.
while you're eating, while you're doing something that's important, and I may or may not have to be at a fast charger.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So it's all those kinds of little things. And I'm still waiting for that place that opens up that has, you know, when we get to that place where you'll have a Burger King, a Taco Bell, a whatever,
Yeah.
as a travel plaza kind of thing, with
Yeah.
places where you have, there's places in the country where you have travel plazas, and right now it's for fuel only.
Right.
But when that's for EVs, that'll be the ideal thing. You come in, you plug your thing
Yeah.
in, you can select the speed that you charge at.
Yeah.
So for a lot of people, a slower charger, what we call a 50 kilowatt charger, means the maximum it can put out is 50 kilowatts, which means your car gets somewhere between 38 and 45. Yeah, I know details, but is fine
Yeah.
in those cases. For a truck, yeah, you probably want a 350 kilowatt charger because that you need all the power you can possibly get.
But that's my point. My point is just that like the product market fit is looking at how can we either create marketing to get the market to want to fit in alignment with the product, or it's how do we build the product to fit in alignment with the market. But both require proper market research, which kind of goes into like the second part I want to get into, which is like you've been doing this for a long time now, right? You've
Right?
been in the business industry, the B2B industry, you've worked and talked to other marketers across the industry.
Yes.
How often does that get done in the marketing industry in your experience?
Almost never. And even when it does get done, there's a lot of caveats. Typically,
Okay.
is typically people have ideas and figured things out without really doing the research.
So I'm curious, what has your process looked like, or what has other people's processes looked like in the past when it came to the market research side of things?
Yeah. Well, for the most part, most people don't do market research because, again, on this product market fit side, so often when people are buying marketing, they're buying marketing. I want the result. I want a customer in the door tomorrow. How much does it cost for one tomorrow?
Right.
Well, that's a little too much. How about 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Get me one there in 2 weeks. And I think I can afford that, or a month,
Yeah.
right? And that's really the wrong approach to get
Well,
proper results because you don't do research.
two things on that note, real quick. I want to say number one, and this is the other reason why I'm a big fan of product market fit, and I'm assuming you were going to get into this point. But if you're worried about getting customers in the doors, that doesn't matter for long-term success because that won't keep them in the doors unless you've done the right proper market product research to be able to know that you're offering something that encourages and is going to get people to want to come back.
Yeah.
Getting someone to try or do something one or two times isn't the same as someone who's a loyal fan. And loyal fans come out of proper product market research knowledge and understanding how to make the two mesh together.
Exactly. And how to have your product not only sold and presented and received, but it all is in alignment with your client.
Yes.
So your customer now goes, oh, wow, this was the greatest experience. You've got to go try.
Yes. It's got to be
whatever.
a win-win relationship.
Yes. And again, because people don't do their research, they miss those.
Yeah. But back to kind of my question before though is like how have you seen or how have you done that conversation with clients? Because I know you even have asked like who's your ideal target, right? Who's your target avatar? Like I know those conversations have been had by you.
Right.
I know you've been with other marketers a part of those conversations as well.
And the problem is that most business owners have no idea who their customer really is. And the reason for that is that they're afraid to ask their customers the hard questions. They're afraid to ask them the personal questions of, what do you watch on YouTube? Most folks do watch something on YouTube. Most folks follow certain channels on YouTube. What channels do you follow on YouTube? They're afraid to ask those kinds of questions, or even basic questions. I've even seen where salespeople are afraid to ask people, well, why did you choose us?
Yeah, I love when I first joined you, like the people who that would be their reaction is like, why would you ask that question?
Yeah, that's so embarrassing. No, it's not. It's important. It's it's real market research. It's getting to the heart of what's really going on for them and in their minds. And the problem is because that's an uncomfortable conversation for a lot of business owners, we just skip that,
Yep.
right? Because we just don't want to do those things that are uncomfortable. And unfortunately, you cut yourself off from all kinds of research and you cut yourself off from finding out. So I had one account that I was working with another marketer on, and once they made all these assumptions about who these people were that they were selling to, and they had all this whole thing built out and all, and then they started making calls, and they found out that nothing that they thought initially was right
Yeah.
for the most part. I mean, most everything you could just chuck it out the window because that's not who their customer is. That's not who makes the decision. That's not why they make the decision.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And it's those kinds of things that are just like just missing opportunities.
Well, and I think to kind of what you discussed, I think one of the biggest things that people don't understand and realize is I didn't understand it fully, but I understand it now. One of the things I've heard a lot is if you want to be a great entrepreneur, you've got to be a great salesman.
Yes,
And I used to not fully understand that because in my mind, okay, well, like I understood in general, right? But what I didn't understand was when they're saying you need to be a great salesman, they mean in the sense of you need to ask those questions that gain the knowledge and the research and the background and the history on your customers so you can better be able to know how to fit your product to them or change your product to what they need.
exactly. Or have those conversations such that you know when the market is moving.
Yes, that as well, absolutely.
Oh yeah, we bought that, but we found this new thing.
Yep,
Oh, you admitted to finding this new thing that takes the place of what we do. Cool. What is it?
yep. What is it and why? No, yeah, I mean, even just basic questions. I mean, there's one guy I followed on YouTube for a while, where they try to help people with the pressure washing industry. And one of the simple questions he said that like has been so valuable is he just goes, "How'd you hear about us?"
Yep.
You know? And if he's doing like a big Facebook ad campaign, he'll be like, "Hey, just curious, like, have you seen our Facebook ad campaign, by the way?" Because he wants to know if I'm spending, a grand, 2 grand a month on this ad campaign, like, did these people even see it?
Exactly.
Like, well, let me phrase it. Did they see it and remember it? Or did it just get lost in the mess of things? Because if it got lost in the mess of things, then either A, don't do it, or B, he needs to change what he's offering or what he's got going on.
Exactly. Exactly.
But it's amazing how many business owners have never had those conversations.
No. No, and are afraid to have those
Yeah.
conversations. And yet those are the things that are the difference between success and failure. And all your large companies that are successful, that are doing well, you'll find out that they're doing that.
Yeah.
Their follow-up surveys, follow-up whatevers.
There's a constant communication. And I think, and this is the big thing I think I want everyone to be able to take away from this is like, to do it properly, right? The way it should be done is it's done seeking a win-win situation, not done seeking a, you know, some kind of outcome of like, oh, like this person, like, I want them to believe this or I want them to do this. It's really going in there with the perception of like, I want to make sure we give you the best product and the best experience possible. So we need to understand what matters to you. Because a lot of people are afraid to give true feedback. I mean,
Yes.
even customers, right?
Yes.
They'll be. I mean, one of the best questions I was ever given that I loved, right? I don't think you've heard this one. So if you're interviewing someone and you're giving them a 0 to 10 scale,
Okay.
right? And they say, "Oh, it was a da da da." Ask them, "Okay, so if you had to choose between the number less or the number above, which would it be?" And you'll find the belief is, and I think it's pretty accurate from some of the studies I've seen. The belief in the studies say that the person will give you how they really feel. Because if someone says, "Oh, it's a 7," right? It looks
Yeah.
like a 7 out of 10, but then they go, "Well, yeah, I would say 6 over an 8." It probably is closer to a 6.
6.
It's just they want to be nice, so they're going to give
You
you a,
just
a bump up,
yeah.
right? It's very rare someone's going to give you the exact feedback, excuse me, that they feel. It's far more likely that they're going to give you I want you to feel good, and this is kind of what the feedback is.
Yeah. 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 So there is a technique to it. I mean, there is definitely a technique and there's some skill and things, but it needs to be done. And and
Yeah,
and the problem is that when you start talking about product market fit and looking at how does your product really fit into the market, it's one thing to say, yes, this person has an interest in purchasing something like this. or would purchase this thing that I'm doing. But the next step is then, well, how does that compare to all the other things? What are all the factors? What is the factor that's going to push them over the edge to say, yes, this, I have to have this?
Yep. No, absolutely. I
You know,
mean,
or where do they have to be? I'm thinking of sports, like these extreme sports, like there's extreme sports people, there's avid sports people, there's people that go out there and do sports because they enjoy
okay,
it,
sure.
and then there's those that really don't have the abilities to do sports much at all, but they do it because it's a social thing.
Okay.
You with me? Each of those groups has very different motivations.
Mm,
And it's important to know which of those groups somebody is in
right.
that is enough to say, "Oh, I need that product."
Yeah. No,
We were
that's
talking
true.
because we were talking about Under Armour the other day
Yep.
and how they're now kind of repositioning themselves into the extreme sports
Yeah.
because those are the people that
The extreme athlete, yeah. Because those are the people that, yeah. No, that's a very good point. But it's I mean, I think the biggest thing that I wanted to just kind of get away from this was like you can't guess and you shouldn't
no, you
guess.
can't guess. I mean, it's okay to guess initially to make a hypothesis,
Oh yeah,
as we talk
absolutely.
about all the time, is in your marketing, you have to make hypotheses. But then the second part of market research is you have to prove or disprove
Yep.
your hypotheses. You can't make hypotheses and then turn around and spend money on it.
Yep.
You need to prove or disprove that that is true and go through the process.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you end up with a product that doesn't really fit your market, and then somebody else shows up and just takes it all away.
Well, I was going to say, how many times have you worked with someone where they said, okay, this is my client, this is what my client cares about, yada, yada, yada. And you do everything, you build everything out, but then it's like, but there's so many other people that say the exact same thing or are going after the exact same people or, you know, like you're not really different.
Right. Well, people tend to either not differentiate
Yep.
or they tend to miss
Or
the
they focus
key.
on the same differentiations,
Or
which
right,
is my frustration
right,
with a lot of people.
correct, right. Well, if you have the same differentiations, then you're not
Different.
different. You're just the same thing, and it just you know by mine rather than theirs, and nobody cares.
Yep.
But what you want to do is move beyond that and really what are the key things that for this group that you want to sell to
Yep.
are going to be the triggers that are going to get them to say, yes, I need this and I need this now.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
And so oftentimes we get so focused, so sales focused, that we forget to step back and look at the broader picture. And the other thing is, too, as business owners, unless you're the salesman and you're willing to take full responsibility for that, don't trust the guy you hired. Ask the questions behind them because it's important. Because,
I wouldn't say you can't trust the guy you hired, but ensure that I mean, do have some kind of checkup system to ensure they are actually asking the right questions and they are recording the data somehow so that
yeah.
you know.
Well, they may be asking the right questions, recording the right data, but what I'm saying is sometimes salespeople have a tendency to do what they feels best to them
Yeah.
rather than what's necessarily best for your business and your account. And it's hard to know that unless you follow up with the customers afterwards and
Yeah.
have some conversations and just not to pick anybody apart, but just get the feel for, where they at? How do they like it? How did things go?
Yeah, and I will say to that point, right? I think this is something that every business owner should be aware of and think about. Your salesmen are your number one, whoever's doing the sales, whoever's interacting with the customers personally, I should say, right? If you have anyone interacting with the customers personally, they are your market research team. Especially when you're small, especially when you're starting
Yep,
out. They are your market research team. So if you're the one interacting with the customers, if you're the one ringing them up, if you're the one taking their money, you are the market research person. And if it's an employee of yours, then they are the market research person. And you need to make sure they're having the conversations and you're having the conversations with them and collecting that data to understand what people are thinking, what people are saying, etc. Because the second you lose touch with your customers, it's only a matter of time until you don't realize that the demands have changed. Someone else has opened up shop that's doing a better job at X, and you start to miss out.
exactly.
And you want to be ahead of that cycle, or at least I'd want you to be ahead of that cycle.
Yes. Well, that's the difference between companies that have been around for 50 years or more and companies that continue to grow and companies that are just kind of struggling to stay in business for the last 50 years.
Yeah.
And that a lot of that is just staying with whatever changes
Yeah.
because undoubtedly demands will change.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, buggies were around for a long time, but they came to the end of their cycle.
Did you just on that note, I'm curious because there's some guys I follow on YouTube who went to a old car show, or not car show, but car museum over in Australia.
Uh-huh.
And they showed how some of the first cars had horse heads on the front of them
Yep.
to get
Doesn't
people more
surprise me.
comfortable. Have you heard of that before?
No, but it doesn't surprise
I
me.
never heard of it, but I thought it was such an interesting thing. Um, because they were talking about how like, oh no, it wasn't. It wasn't the car museum guy. It was someone anyway, but they were talking about like with electric cars, how they're having like the Autoden like car noise and like speakers for the car noise, how it's like an attempt to like create just like the automobiles try to have these horse heads on the front to create a sense of like it's not changing, but it is changing. I thought that was such an interesting idea of product market fit, of adjusting your product slightly to fit what the market's comfortable with,
Yeah.
rather than trying to ask the market to change completely to this whole new thing, trying to find a way to gradually transition that.
Yeah.
I thought was an interesting thing.
It's a horseless carriage, but it has a horse head on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
Um, I mean, but that's, I mean, I don't know. Like, I think that kind of sums up the product market fit, unless you had something else to throw in there.
No, I think that's a good I think we've covered everything because the big thing is just it's one thing to say that somebody will buy it. It's another thing to make sure that it really properly fits them.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key thing to product market fit that a lot of people miss or they have success, which I'm against success, just so you know, because when you have success, what happens is you tend to say, well, we're doing everything right. Everything's
Yep.
fine. And everything may not be fine, and you may not be doing everything right, and you may be creating a market for someone else
Yeah.
who looks at what you're doing and says, hey, you know what? This is really not fit, doesn't really fit the market all that well. If I made this one little change or I presented it in a little different way.
So I'm curious because you've been around long enough. Can you think off the top of your head by chance of any companies who have done that? Because I know that's happened. I
No,
just
but I've seen it. I've
okay.
seen it. I'm trying to think who was like the number two company to come out with something and they just totally stomped the number one company.
Because I know that's happened. I know I've heard stories of like, it's just like couple transitions here and there, and then they just wipe out the competition. But I just can't think of any off the top of my head. So I was
Yeah.
curious if you had
No,
any.
I can't think of any either, but it has happened. I've seen it firsthand,
Well, what
and
about
it's
Dodge? Dodge
fascinating.
was like that, right? With their Challenger and Chargers,
As far
as
as
far as they took over the Mustang market, from my understanding.
yes, they took over the muscle car market because they focused all their efforts on the muscle car market. Everybody else who was in the muscle car market was living on their laurels
Right.
and assumed that people would just buy it because, and
Well, what I'm
the
saying is like,
actual
from my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, Mustangs were like one of the big cars, right, for a very long time.
well, they were one of the first muscle cars. Mustang, the other thing that it has that nobody is aware of, but Mustang kept the same body style for like 10 years.
Okay, I didn't know
So
that
they were
one.
the first ones before the Chrysler K car, which everybody talks about
Yep,
as the for American cars having the same basic model for 5 years because that's
sure.
what their thing was. The Ford Mustang came out with one body style, and that's what that body style was for 15 years. And they only revised it
Wow.
recently. So I mean, it ran like 10, 15 years, and then they made some small changes,
Yep,
and it ran for another 10, 15 years, something like that. And it's only recently that they've had to kind of really go in and
really modify it
really
heavily.
redo things, change the engine, change everything. Otherwise, it was just the exact same car because people just loved it so
It's
much.
just that. I mean, I think cars are great. I mean, I think they're great because you see the competition change that happened and the differentiations that happened in the car industries. Is the only reason I brought it up is I think of like Dodge, the Dodge Charger, and the Ford Mustang, which has had a back and forth race between the two.
Right. And it used to be the Chevy Nova was the other one that was
Yes,
was
that one.
fighting with those.
What happened to that one, by the way?
What happened to the Nova is Nova in Spanish is Nova.
Okay.
Okay. Nova in Spanish translated into English means no go because va is the verb for
Yep.
go. So it had said no go. So in any non Spanish speaking country, Nova was a great thing because it's a Nova. It's a star that's a
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
supernova, super powerful. But in all the Spanish speaking countries, it's a car that has no go.
Gotcha. That's interesting. Okay. That's interesting. I just was curious because I think the Novas were really cool,
Yes.
and they
Yeah.
just seem to have disappeared. I
Yeah.
have no clue what happened to
Yeah.
them.
It was because of the Nova. And because of that, they were never able to reintroduce it with a different name that
Yeah. No, I
got it out
gotcha.
there. And it just kind of. And the other thing was the GTO, Pontiac GTO,
Yeah, okay.
which died early on.
That was a quick run
Yeah.
vehicle.
Yeah. It died in the 70s or early 70s, but it was the muscle car of the day.
Okay. And so, if you were to look back on those, what do you think was the determinants that made the Mustang and the Charger survive?
Well, the Mustang survived just because it had this loyal following. And for some reason, the people that bought one went out and bought another one
But
once it ran out.
okay,
Okay.
but what do you think created the loyal following? Like, what about it? Because it wasn't maintenance. I know that for a
No, no,
fact.
no, no, no. It was looks. It was how the car sounded,
Okay.
and it was the status that it brought you, kind of like Tesla has now.
So was Mustang really popular in movies back then, or where did that status come from?
Well,
Because I know they beat
right,
Porsche or
right,
whatever,
right.
Ferrari. I think it was Ferrari, right?
Yeah,
They beat one of the big
yeah,
Italian companies.
right. So
But where'd that status come from of a Mustang?
yeah, so it started in the people, in a grassroots movement of people that just loved the car and started meeting up with it. And so
Okay.
yeah, if you saw a car show, there would be just Mustang car shows. Where there's nothing but just
So
Mustangs.
that used to be a legitimate, like,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah, same thing we do now. But I mean, but Mustangs were the first ones to do that,
right.
and a lot of that just continued on
Mm.
over time.
But that had nothing to do with what Ford did, though, I'm assuming.
Right, had nothing to do with Ford.
Just
It was
something they
just
got
that the
lucky.
people who got them, loved the way it looked, loved what it appeared for them, and then eventually they ended up in movies.
Okay.
Okay, and it was because this is this iconic car, kind of like Harley Davidson.
Okay.
Okay, like Harley Davidson motorcycles in movies. You very
Sure.
seldom see a movie without a Harley Davidson if there's a
If there's a
motorcycle.
motorcycle, yes.
Okay, or a
Uh,
motorcycle of that size.
I
Okay,
mean, it's kind of
that type.
changed a little bit, but
Right, but it's changed now. But in the
for a
day,
long
in the
time.
60s, 70s, 80s, 90s,
Yeah.
if there was a motorcycle that was a street bike, it was a Harley Davidson.
Right.
Okay, um, so the Ford Mustang moved into that because of all of this fanfare about it.
Okay.
Okay, the Charger was the number two. They were the up and comers. They were the ones who were trying to get into
Okay.
the muscle car market, kind
Right.
of thing. And they never did anything that really outdid the Mustang.
Gotcha.
Because remember, if it's a sports car, I don't care about maintenance.
Yep.
I care about, the looks and whatnot
Yep.
and prestige.
Yep.
And they were never able to build up the Charger prestige until recently, when
Okay.
pretty much nothing else was working for them. And they said, we're going to focus on our marketing and everything on that market.
Right.
Where Ford already had a marketing system in place on
Right.
there that was then multiplied by this grassroots movement.
Right. And so what you're saying is from your experience and knowledge, a lot of it was prestige associated with the vehicle.
Correct. See, the Mustang's big caveat, its greatest advantage and its greatest disadvantage is it was a car for two.
Well, I'm curious, because you grew up in Michigan,
Yep,
which is like the lifeblood of that car in
yep.
that
Car
area,
Central, yep.
right? What what was like how would you describe the Mustang owners back in the day, at least? Like, what would you say was like their connecting like attitudes or like approaches that like made that badge?
It was always about the prestige of owning a Mustang
Right, right.
because everybody knew a Mustang
No,
was
no.
fast. It was a
But
muscle
like, what
car.
was the like? If you were to describe the right, I understand that was the prestige. What I'm saying is like prestige means that it means something to that person, and it makes them feel that they're a type of way.
Right,
Right? Like I'm a girl getter. I'm
right,
a
right.
smooth talker. You know
Yeah,
what I'm saying? Like things like
right,
that.
right.
Like what would you say were like the things that were described that would describe the like
Okay,
the people who are like Mustang wannabes and the
okay,
that kind of thing?
okay. Anybody 16 to 24,
Okay.
the Mustang was a way to get a girl.
Okay.
That or a Corvette Stingray.
Okay.
Okay, all right,
Mustang being the cheaper man's version.
right, right. The more affordable way to get a girl.
Yeah.
Okay, and it has seats for two, like I said.
Yep.
Okay, so that was key.
Okay.
All right, you could put four people in it if you had to, but
It was a two
it
person
was a
really.
two-person car,
Right.
and
Okay.
it made you know that it was a two-person car. It didn't
Mm.
let that go. Okay,
Okay.
so if you're chasing girls, that's the car to have. From 24 to 30, it's the status symbol of I have the muscle car
Okay.
that has the best acceleration, yada yada yada.
Okay. So just that mindset of being able to go
Yeah,
fast.
and then by that time, also it had been in several James Bond movies, which only helped to add fuel to the fire in other movies.
Yep.
And so on top of this base of it's a way to get a girl,
Right.
I mean, what girl would turn down a ride in a Mustang?
Right. And so that was kind of the logic.
Yeah, versus sportier looking cars that were
So they really built a market geared around, and like it's funny you say it because like I'm like yeah I can actually see where that was kind of the way it was built was really geared towards like this is the car to go on a date with. This is the car that like the cool guy. I think of like what's the movie Grease. I think of Grease. I can't think of the main character's name, but I think of him and I'm like I feel like Mustang was built for that type of personality, that type of
exactly,
outlook on
and that's
life,
what it says.
and so
I'm the cool, stylish in guy,
yeah,
and I've got the in car.
and I can go fast and I can yada yada. Okay.
And it just comes that way.
Right.
I didn't have to do all kinds of modifications to it. It just comes that way.
But when I think about it, you're right. I think build it. I think it's the best muscle car built for a date out of all the muscle cars. Like I'm thinking about the front seats and how close they are and how the center console is and how I'm just
Yeah,
thinking like how everything is built and I'm like
and
if
it
you look at any other muscle car, it's not built to have that
and it
couple dynamic as easily.
it only comes in a two door.
Yeah.
Only a two door. Most all the other ones had an option of two doors
Or
or
four
four.
doors. And it's built like that. Even the two doors are built like a four-door potential kind of system.
Yeah.
It's just that's an interesting. I don't know if anyone's ever talked about the Mustang from that perspective, but that's an actually really interesting way to look at it. As that to like, well, it's just as far as the differentiator was really like it was the car for couples. It was the car for dates.
Right.
It was built to
Right.
produce
For
that
the cool guy who wanted to impress the girl.
like, and it's built for that.
Yeah. And you can afford it.
Right.
That was the most coolest thing about it is you could afford it.
Yeah.
And it had multiple engines depending on what your price range was.
Right. Yeah, no, that's such an interesting way to look at it and
And
talk about it.
see, and then once you got married, you were past 24 and you got married in those days.
Yep.
Now it's the status car. I've got the muscle car that
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it held that status, it sounds like, regardless, but it starts with that status being geared towards a specific segment or psychographic, right? And
yes,
that psychographic was the guy who wants to be able to get the girl
right,
and the guy who has the best car for dating a girl,
right.
right? It can go fast, it can go, it can move, yada, yada, yada. And like, you're able to be close to each other. You're able to like, yeah, That's so interesting. And that's product market fit. Whether
Exactly.
Ford realized it or not when they built the car, I don't think they did from the
No,
stuff
they
I've
did.
seen on it.
No, they did not. They did not. It was a fluke.
Yeah.
Somewhere, somebody in the design department got their way, and somebody in the engineering department got their way and bought into the thing,
Yeah.
and put it together, and somebody let it through the gauntlet.
And I just want to say this on that point, right? There's a lot of companies out there, that have gained their success through luck and just fluke accidents.
Yes.
And if you want to continue down the path of like, this is what I think the case is, or this is what I want it to be, you can continue down that path, but you are praying that a fluke accident is what makes it successful.
Well, you're playing the lottery, is what you're really
I mean,
doing.
better odds in the lottery, but yes, you're playing the
You're
lottery.
still essentially playing the lottery. You're hoping that this role works.
Yeah.
And spending a lot of time and effort and money rather than spending the time doing the market research. Oh, we are having success. Things are going great. Fantastic. Let's find out why.
Yep.
Let's learn about these people and let's really dig in so that we can figure out whether we're on the edge and we're just getting the money because
Yep.
they've got too much money,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
to speak, or whether this is really something that
No, absolutely. Sustainable, long term. Why is it long term? Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, no. I mean, I'm such a big believer of like why, and like being able to have a guesstimate of what's going on.
correct.
And I think it's interesting because
Not that we always guess right,
no, absolutely
but
not.
we know that we're guessing is the difference
Well, my thing is
rather than
we know
just
when
doing
we're
it.
guessing and when we're not guessing.
Yeah.
And to me, the biggest thing that I think is frustrating for me now, having been in this, the way that I have, is I look back to you and I'm like, when you first started this company, it was all guesswork. It was all, I think I should be here. I think I should be there. I think I should be doing that. And it was very hopeful, I guess, in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And I think looking back, we can both point to where, like, if you had done your market research, you could have adjusted your offerings, you could have adjusted your focus to better match what was going on.
Correct. And spend that networking time to network my business to actually be time to actually do market research.
And understand the
And I'm actually
customers.
here to do market research to see what people really want.
Yeah.
And that would have been a different approach, and that would have probably
Well, I think it would change the
would
outcome of what you were offering, even,
definitely,
right?
definitely.
Because
It
you
would have
would have
changed what I
seen
offered, how I offered it, and who I offered it to.
exactly, and yeah, and I just
And would have catapulted me forward in a lot of different ways.
I think in a lot of areas, yes, absolutely, and I mean I think that's partly a big reason why I'm so passionate about this whole like market research and product market fit stuff is because I look at you and I think of your last 7-8 years and I'm going like, if what we've done in the last year and a half you had done 7-8 years ago, we would be such a different company,
Yes.
and it would be a
Totally
legit
different place.
corporation, not a company.
Yes.
Right, I think it could legitimately be a corporation because there'd be so much data and invaluable information
Right.
available.
And we would have employees because we'd have to have employees
Yep.
because of the volume of things and so on. Yes.
Because we'd be offering and we'd know exactly what we were offering and why they wanted it and be able to offer it to what they wanted. I mean, I think of it's like I'm just going to throw this out real quick, right? It's like the one guy I was working with and talking to recently, and it's like this one kid wants to tell him how to do the business, but he wants to tell him how to do the business, and that's kind of it. I interact with the guy and I realize what he cares about, why he has the business, what the business is doing, like what the purpose of it is to them. And okay, well, let's better create that message by doing this.
Right.
And it's that transition of mindset that takes the guy from like, sure, whatever, to like, okay, I'm interested.
Right.
Right. Let's talk. And I just think that's such a like so important to be able to point out to people is like, that's the difference between success and failure in sales sometimes is it's going from, hey, let me tell you how I can help you to, hey, have you struggled with this? Oh, really? Like, have you found a solution? Right? And going from that approach to, well, try this versus this, like, oh, do this.
Yeah. Or I haven't struggled with that. And you know that
Okay,
That's not your customer.
so move on or figure out what's going on in their
Yeah,
life.
and
Absolutely.
spend time with somebody else,
Yeah.
depending on what it is.
Depending on the
Right?
situation, absolutely. And it's those small differences that make your success versus failure, in my opinion, in my
Yes,
experience so far.
yes,
And yeah.
yeah. And sometimes what's really scary is sometimes it's as little as one word, and that has been proven in history over time. It can be as little as one silly word is the difference between an ad that just knocks it out of the park and one that falls on its face.
Yeah.
And so that's why we say, yes, we believe in experimentation, but we believe that we in experimenting when we know that we're experimenting,
Yes.
rather than saying I'm going to go through all these processes, and if you get something and you get some sales, that's great. If you don't, well then we went through all the process.
But I also think, well, and I'll throw this out there real quick. I was going to cut it off, but bringing that up, I want to touch on this real quick because I think this will be a good side segment / a good important part of this product market fit. Because you've been doing Google websites now for 8 9 years, okay?
Yep.
You've been dealing with the website's articles things for what 20 years now?
Something like that. Yeah.
Like I know you wrote your first article back in Georgia,
Yeah.
so it's been close to 20 years
Yeah.
since you've like been messing around with the internet. How much have you seen competition A change and B people and websites created to not show differentiation outside of price?
Yeah.
Because I think of like Kayak, Expedia, Yelp, or not Yelp, Thumbtack, you name it. There's a bunch of websites that just put you on this thing and say, hey, they do X service and, give them a call for a price. And that hasn't always been the case.
No, it hasn't always been the case. It's this ongoing. I don't know. To me, it's one of those things that has worked from time to time, but as soon as it starts working, it dies.
Right.
Like Angie's List. Angie's List was great for
Great
businesses,
example.
business owners. They loved it. They flocked to it. They spent a whole bunch of money on it. Then everybody was on Angie's List.
Yep.
And Angie's List wanted more money, and it started becoming unprofitable to be on Angie's List.
Yep.
And now with Google's latest changes that they've made over the last 3 quarters, August, September, and now October.
Yep.
Um,
April too.
yeah, in April of this year that it started. I know where they're going. I'm not sure that most websites can go there or have any interest in going there, and I'm not sure you can afford to go there.
Yeah.
And that's what we're right now trying to work out with one of our clients, because it's a very different world, a very different type
Yep.
of content and all that they want on your website. It's like you want to show up on Google, you want to do this, but what your customers actually looking for is over here.
Yeah.
And I'm still right now trying to figure out how do we get the two
Bridge the two. Yep.
together, because for a lot of companies it's not going to end well.
Yeah.
And for a lot of situations, it's not going to end well. And what's worse is the customer is going to end up on the short end of the stick. Up to this point, Google has been very good at improving search quality. This year in 2023, they've actually stepped down and disproved, in other words, taken search quality and reduced it.
I actually disagree on you there. I don't think they've lessened the quality. From my perspective at least, right? I think there's been so much competition that Google's having to try to find a way to lessen the competition for people. And I think they're becoming more stringent on how they're trying to eliminate the bad actors, we'll call them, right?
Right.
Really, what it is these e-commerce people
Right.
who just build a website and buy from China and ship it from China, or buy a website and, they're not really doing real business stuff.
Right.
Because let's be honest, e-commerce, drop shipping, half a dozen other kind of, internet businesses have come about that aren't really doing good work, aren't high quality, aren't easy, don't have customer service, don't have, there's all kinds of issues that happen. And I think Google's gotten enough blame and complaints that they're trying to go, how do we vet out those kind of things?
Right. But the way that they're going about vetting them out is they're actually forcing you to write content that you would not write normally.
I agree.
That there's no rational reason for you to write because your customer
Yes,
really doesn't care.
I agree.
And want you to write a lot of content that is really for the person who's researching the subject. And when I get to buying, I don't want research.
Yep.
I just want to find out where I can buy this.
No, absolutely.
And that may very well end up being an option for Bing.
I mean, I will say to
That
this
might
point,
open
I
it.
think, well, I will say Google works, and as we've seen, Google works for the buying. You just now have to put in that you want to buy X, or you want it near you, you know,
Yeah.
and that's, I think, a transition that's definitely changing the game, and it's going to require the users, right, the everyday people who are searching on Google to change either A, change how they're looking things up, or B, they're going to start leaving Google for Bing or someone else. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my opinion of where we're at.
No, I agree. And I think if Bing ever had a chance to get back in the game, right now is that time.
Yeah.
Because these last 3 updates that they did this year have forced them to be very much something that, yes, it's great for AI, but I don't know that it's great for me.
Right. And I mean, I'll throw this out there as one final thing on that note. This is also why, in my opinion, understanding marketing and advertising to your to the market you want to go after and making it fit that market takes you beyond the generalization.
Right. And
Right.
it takes you beyond generalized digital marketing, which we've talked about
Yeah.
multiple times about it used to be cheap. You
Yep.
used to be able to buy AdWords for 10 cents a word. And at 10 cents a word, I can, spend a lot of money
Oh yeah.
on something that I'm making, several $1,000s on and still make a profit. But when I'm spending $2 to $12 for that same
Yep.
10-cent thing, all of a sudden it's not profitable.
Well, there's that, but also just in the sense of like if you're advertising to your people, right, that are buying your product, and then you're sending them emails or your specific ads around their location, say Facebook ads, and you're talking about how your company is that whole service company, or your company is that we do this project, we'll say, right,
Mhm.
and it's something that's important and matters to that market segment. That person will tell their friends about that particular dynamic.
Right.
They won't talk about, oh yeah, I had someone pressure wash my house. They'll talk about, I had someone pressure wash my entire house, or I had someone pressure wash just this, which was really bad. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And it's more of that dynamic that I think is really how you can kind of differentiate yourself, A, for Google, but also just in general in people's minds. Because if they just want to hire someone to pressure wash their house, they're going to go, okay, well, who do I hire? But if they know that you deal with specifically doing this, whatever the differentiator is, right? We only do, we do the driveways real cheap, or we do the entire house cheap, but we always do the entire house, right?
Right.
Just depending on how you approach that differentiation, it can really make a big difference.
Correct. Correct. And it's using multiple channels rather than just buying a single channel and hoping that that channel works. It's
Yeah.
it's it's communicating with people in multiple different ways, and it's important.